Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a special guest. His name is Bud Kraus. He has a podcast over at seriouslybud.com. You can also find him over at joyofwp.com. I met Bud recently at a conference. He's a course creator. He's a WordPress professional. He's a teacher. We're going to mine as many tips, tricks, and strategies as we can out of Bud. But first, Bud, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, what a pleasure to be here. Now, I have a question for you, which I should have asked before.
Yeah.
I know you're recording this, but video too?
Video too. And we're live streaming right now while we're recording.
Oh, no. Okay. All right, turn this off. No, just kidding. All right, and I should have asked before, but what the heck? Now I know.
All right. Well,
so thank you for having me on too. This is really nice.
Absolutely. Take us into your past. Like, you were a teacher, and I think one of the things, particularly in the LMS space, sometimes entrepreneurs get excited about information products, building courses, selling courses, and a lot of people pull it off with no teaching background, but teaching and instructional design is like a fundamental skill. Tell us your history as a teacher, some pro teaching tips, and then how you've used that when you've created courses in your life.
Boy, that's such a great question. And I think that's one of the fundamental things about before you ever start doing a course. If you can get some real live in class, that's a rare thing these days, I know, in class teaching experience, I think you're going to be better off in the sense that when you teach a course, at least my experience is, it's so important to be prepared that you have a beginning and a middle and an end for the entire course and for each lesson. And that you do this a number of times, meaning semesters or years, teaching the same material, tweaking it as you go forward, so that there is a method to the way you do things and that you understand it and that you've tried it out on people and you've gauged a reaction as to whether or not they're learning. And once you have all that kind of experience, then I think it's a good time to do an online course. Now, that's not how the real world works. I understand that, but that's how my journey went with online teaching, which is I did things live in class first. And by doing it, then you really become an expert and authority on the subject. It makes it so much easier to create the content for the course. It really is, because basically you already have it. And then it's just a matter of putting it together in there, however you do this, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But so I felt very fortunate that I went that way. It wasn't planned, but I'm lucky that it did.
We call that the expert's curse, where like you got this knowledge, but you need to figure out how to teach it or coach a student and get feedback and improve the stuff over time. What was the subject matter you would teach on?
Well, the only things I really ever taught was HTML, CSS, and WordPress. I taught a little bit of Dreamweaver, but if you can remember what that is, I'm sure you might, but I taught a little bit of that, but for the most part, it was just good old fashioned coding back in the 2000 aughts, because that's really the way people made websites. And I was teaching in New York City. Most of the students were coming from graphic arts background. So I had to deal with a group of people who were not believing what the nature of the medium was, which is it's a text-based medium, and it's really not a graphic medium. I know there's pictures and I get it, all that stuff, but at the end of the day, when you look at the source code, you're not looking at pictures, you're looking at text. So I had to convince a lot of people, hey, this is really the way to do it. Don't just insert a flash video here. Let's do it. Let's play to the strengths of the medium. I know that, people don't always, at least in those days, they didn't really like that. But, I had to convince them. A lot of them really were not believers. I was talking about resizing and this and that, and not pixelite, not setting things by pixels. And it took a little bit of doing to tell people, no, this is the way to do it. And because they just weren't believers. They didn't understand the medium. And it took a long time for people to, understand the nature of responsive design is really what I'm getting at. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, I guess.
On the other side of teaching is learning, and I've been around WordPress, I think about 17 years. It's been a long time, and it's changed a lot. And I'm not a developer. I can't write HTML and CSS like you can. I
Hmm.
felt like when I found WordPress, I was like, oh, this is something for me. I mean, I know you can customize it with code,
Sure.
but
Right.
I could build websites without knowing a line of code, and I just fell in love with it. How do you think WordPress is different now in terms of like if you were teaching somebody how to use it, um, like what would your approach be?
Well, that's a great question. I certainly could go on for a long time, so I'll try to truncate my answer here. I think overall, since I've been teaching WordPress since, let's say 2012, 13, I think it was easier to learn then than it is now.
Yeah.
It's just become more complex. I know it's not supposed to be, the idea was make complex things simple. And I think they made complex things complex. So it just seemed a lot easier to sort of stick a word processor into a CMS, which is what WordPress was in those days, and let the user, the creators, decide how to extend and modify their experience. Now it's no, we'll basically give you the experience, and you'll just have to adjust. And that with the block editor. And I understand the philosophy behind all this stuff. So, like I said, I can go on for hours talking about this. But as a practical matter, as somebody who's taught all this through the years, it's harder for people to learn WordPress today in general than it is 10 years ago. It just is. Um, and I regret saying that because I don't think that was the intent. But as somebody who has seen in the field how this works, I think it's just true. It's actually harder for me sometimes to work with WordPress, and I forget how things are supposed to work, or how they work, or they don't work, or yeah. So there. I know this is the year of taking thing. No more major releases, and I'm hoping that there'll be a lot of that polishing they keep talking about, fixing things that need to be fixed before moving on. So hopefully, this will be the pause that refreshes kind of year, because we need it.
You're also a writer. I think writing is a super skill. Like it communication and writing is everywhere. It's not just writing books or blogs. I mean, everything's writing. From emails to figuring out a plan to making a video. It's all writing. Tell us about your journey as a writer.
Well, as you say that, I'm thinking like, yeah, but, and here's the, what the yeah, but's going to be. I think, up until recently, I would say writing is the number one skill of today in this era in the digital age. But now I'm not so sure anymore because of AI.
Okay.
And it's still important, but boy, I mean, I use AI all the time for different things. And I'm starting to wonder, where is my future? Now, I'm not 25 years old, so I don't have to think about a long runway here. But I do write. I write for web hosts like Kinsta and Hostinger, and I've written for GoDaddy and others, and we'll continue to write until they say we don't need you anymore. However, I learned recently they still seem to think they need me, which is really nice. Which because uh, uh, right now I still think the human touch of writing, you can still kind of read the difference. Okay, I can pretty much tell AI from a human, and I love it as an assistant. I think as an assistant, it's tremendous, giving me ideas, fixing this, better that, answering questions. But I can't, I just don't want. I mean, we're going to come to a day where you're just going to write a blog post. Where I guess we're already there. You write a blog post. They write a blog post about Bud Kraus and done. I don't know what is the value of that. We going to lose that too? On the other hand, who where is all this AI? Where are they learning all this stuff from? People who write. So
Yeah.
it's sort of I teach Chat GPT and it teaches me. It's sort of like that. We're in kind of like that phase right now. And I am discovering all kinds of different AIs, not just ChatGPT. I've used Cursor AI. I'm using this video animation AI now. These tools are great, but I fear that they are going to replace us. I'm sorry, I just do. I mean, what do you think? Can I ask questions on the show? Is that
Yes,
okay?
you can. This is what happens when you interview another podcaster. They come back around, which is great.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely with you on where's the source material.
Mhm.
As a person who's been podcasting for a long time, there's like 500 hours of transcripts of this podcast alone that
Wow.
an AI could just
Sure.
probably already has like scanned and put into the language model. Um, I think at least for the medium term,
Hmm.
writing is still important for communicating to the AI.
Yeah.
And I think about the difference between writing a prompt that says something like, "Hey, make me an online course about X,"
Right.
versus like going into detail, like, "Hey, this is my avatar. This is what I already know, already want to teach. What are the gaps?" And then having an iterative back and forth. You still need to be able to communicate, but I think it does create it does give me concern, but it also I find myself as a writer not being lazy, but there's like a pull of laziness in the sense of like even when prompting, like not correcting spelling errors and just kind of
Yeah.
the desire or the tendency or the inclination for shortcuts is there, and I think
Yes.
that's dangerous territory. And like you said, polish, even if AI is helping, like the human polish on top really makes it awesome. But where we're going to be in 6 years, I don't know.
Oh, I'm not even so sure. I really can't tell you in 2 years. I mean, it's just it's such a uh, it is, I think, to me, and it is the biggest shift, change, whatever, however you want to describe it, important revolution. I don't know, in my life. And the funny thing is, I've lived long enough. You could have said like television, radio, no, telephones. No, no, no. I'm not that old, but all these technologies which come faster and faster and faster, and they're more and more and more and more important. I mean, we thought like the web was like, oh my god. I mean, like, what could ever be more important than this? Wrong. And what's going to be more important than AI? I don't know. I mean, this sort of seems like the end of the road here, but no, I don't know. I think there'll be human teleportation one day. Okay, that's kind of big if that's possible. Everybody's so I've heard it's impossible, possible. I think it's possible, but we don't know how to do it now, obviously. But so wouldn't that be a groundbreaking thing? Yeah, I think so. So we don't reach the end with technology. We're just there is no end. But this certainly is so. Like any, and the stakes here get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like the web, well, that's really good, but it also could be dangerous. Well, look at AI, really good, but boy, could this thing be dangerous. It seems like, yeah, you as these technologies get more pervasive, important, predominant in our lives, you can easily see that the good is really good and the bad is like God only knows. You know, I mean, with AI, cancer, this, that. I mean, and then who knows with the bad? So I don't even want to think about it. Anyway, where were we? So let's talk about creating courses. I mean, that's because we were talking a little bit before, and I want to talk about that. Is
Well,
that okay?
I mean, and just dovetailing into AI,
Yeah.
one of our company values at Lifter LMS is um, learner results first. So, like, we build software for people building sites and stuff, but we always think about the student and their experience. It's like our primary concern. And related to AI, uh,
Yeah.
how do people learn? Like, I myself find myself using Google less and going to AI to learn something,
Right.
um, and particularly if it's something custom. I think a great example is instead of going to a recipe blog, like, hey, I want to make curry chicken tonight. I can go to the AI and be like, uh, I have this much chicken. These are the vegetables I have. Like, make me an awesome recipe. And it's so
Yeah.
custom and customized. I think that the AI tutor is going to be helpful, but I have hope that the human in the loop will always add value, but our job description might change as course creators
Well,
or becoming more
yeah.
like coaches, I guess. But what are your
Well,
thoughts?
well, here's the thing, and I'm thinking as you're bringing this up, which is, I mean, I like to learn new stuff too. Would I take an online course to learn JavaScript, or would I just have, you know, ChatGPT teach me whatever I want to know about JavaScript? The answer is probably the latter. Now, do I need to know JavaScript like a programmer? No. But can I like just like parachute into part of JavaScript, learn that and pull it out and use it? Yes. So I think that course creation and the kind of things that you do, that's, I could see that's a real problem. If I was creating a course today, you know what the answer is? I wouldn't probably be creating a course today. Now now I say this because number one, everything I could create has been done 10,000 times already. So why do I need to make something that's been done? The last course I made was on using the Gutenberg block editor. This was about 2021 or so, maybe 2020, I don't know. And I went around to everybody in WordPress. What do you think of this idea? I went around to Course Create. Oh, that's a great idea. We need it, blah, blah, blah. Nobody needed it. Nobody needed it. It wasn't, yeah, I didn't market it very well, but nobody really needed it because they could already Google stuff and they already, before AI. And it was just, and there were also fundamental flaws to what I was doing that really doomed this thing. But as far as creating a course today, I think when I write an article on, let's say, an in-depth look at theme JSON, I think that's a form of teaching. So that's sort of the way I teach today. Is I'll write like a long article for, let's say, Kinsta, and you're reaching God knows how many people, and hopefully they think it's valuable to their customers, and that's teaching. I mean, it's different. I mean, and you're probably teaching, and you're definitely teaching the AIs, but that's a really good point you brought up. It made me think, like, are we writing for humans, or are we writing to teach or enter, the LMLs, right? Learning, is it large? What is it?
LLMs, large
Yeah,
language models.
thank you. So, yeah, are we teaching that, or are we teaching humans, or we're doing both, or what? So it's really a time of such change in the world of education, which is, the broader sense of what we're talking about. And I just don't know. I mean, there's, like I said, for the example I gave is perfect for just a little piece of something. But how about becoming an expert in something? Would that work? When you have a course, you have guidance. You have somebody who's thought through the beginning, the middle, and an end. If you're just using ChatGPT, it's sort of a hit and miss if you're trying to learn something big. I'll give you for example. If you were learning CSS, where would you start? I don't know. And I give that as an example because in 1998 or 9, when I was just first learning it, I didn't know where to start, and I dived into the deep end of the pool, and I got confused. I got turned off. Of course, the browsers weren't supporting CSS very well. And I just didn't look at CSS for another 2 or 3 years because I started out at the wrong place. A course online that's well thought out will guide a user in a way that a student in a way that I don't think AI can do it now, and give you the whole picture of what it is that you need to know. So there's still value, I guess, yes, in courses, when I'm just thinking out loud here. But as time goes on, I think it's going to be tougher and tougher for course creators. It just is. I've said to my wife, I don't even know if I need to have what's going to happen to education? Are we going to need teachers anymore? When you can just learn a lot of stuff by just learning how to learning how to work with prompts. Well, that's kind of like ridiculous, but again, good and bad, right?
I'm
It's on the
optimistic.
extremes. Yeah.
I'm optimistic because, at least in the past, disruptive technology usually opens up new opportunity, but an evolution is required, and this is a very confusing one. I remember when I fell in love with WordPress, just this idea that I could build a website. I'm not a developer, and anybody anywhere in the world with an internet connection could see it. I
Yeah,
fell in love with that idea, but I
sure.
didn't at the time know, oh, well, you can extend this platform and turn it into web applications and all the stuff that happened after that.
Right.
We can't always see where we're going, but I'm optimistic that new opportunities will be there, but we have to evolve. And the other thing you mentioned, you talked about parachuting in to JavaScript or whatever.
Right. Right.
There's a framework. A friend of mine said there's just in case education and then just in time. And, sort of there's an argument that traditional education is a lot of just in case. Here's the library of stuff for you to put in your head. And then there's just in time, which AI is really good at, is like, hey, I need to know how to fix this plumbing problem right now,
Right. Right.
or it's like right now, right in the moment.
Yeah.
But also believe there is a benefit to what some would call liberal arts education, where you're like studying
Right.
broad topics that like don't they might not help you get a job per se, but they're kind of helping shape your mind. So, and this goes back to the laziness thing I was talking about. If everything just becomes just in time prompt stuff and AI, like what does that do to brain development? And yeah, I mean, if the AI is smarter than us and we get super intelligence and all that stuff, how are we humans going to feel? And we should still probably develop our minds, you know?
Well, that's the scary part of all. I mean, it's one of the scary parts of the future of this is that we just don't know. I mean, nobody knows. I don't care who you talk to. They don't know. Nobody. How could you know? I mean, some people seem to know, probably have a better insight than I do. That's for sure. But with certainty, I know it's very hard to um, sort of rethink in a profound, fundamental, complete way the nature of, let's say, learning and education going forward. I mean, we have, what's really cool to me is that, your brain can only hold so much data, right? So most of the data we now use and hold is external, it's outside of us. It's sort of like the thin client concept, right? It really is. Do you remember that term, thin client, where, you didn't need a hard drive, basically,
I
And
don't fully
we have a little
understand it.
tiny little hard drive in there.
Can you
Yeah.
explain thin client?
Yeah, thin client. Really, I think the first time I heard of the term was Sun Microsystems was using it in like the 1990s,
Okay.
and I couldn't quite figure out what. Maybe there was a skinny person or something, but thin client, it refers to the fact that this was really early thinking, is that all the data would be online or in the cloud or however you want to put it, and not stored in your local computer.
Okay.
And your local computer was, would be just a very small hard drive. And essentially, that's what we have today. So your brain is sort of like the thin client because you can't store that much in there relative to what is out there. And knowing that means, I mean, I'm conscious of that. So why do I have to learn this stuff? Why do I have to learn like almost anything now? I mean, what's really cool, or maybe not, is that I can get an assignment, and I do. I take on like writing assignments, and I look at this and go, oh, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to use I don't know how to use WPCLI for multi-site. And then I start getting into it, and I say, oh yeah, you do. Here, ask ChatGPT how this works. So I have enough of a foundation of vocabulary to build to the next step. But what happens if I don't have any foundation? I don't know the answers to those questions. Like if somebody just threw me in and said, like, I don't know React. Okay, here, do something with React. I don't know if I could like navigate my way through that with AI. I should try that to see, like, can I come up with something useful with some kind of programming language that I do not know anything about? I probably could, which is like, like, why do we need developers? And developers aren't losing, hey, a really smart guy. Now I give this credit to Marcus Burnett, but he's not a really smart guy. So, the Marcus and I are very good friends, but Marcus said quite a while ago, he said, it's it's not, it's like you're not going to lose your job to AI, but you are going to lose your job to the person who knows how to use AI.
Yeah.
And then and Marcus didn't say that. He said a smart person. I always, and that's true. I find that right now, if you're a developer, if you're almost anything in some kind of information world like we are, if you don't know how to use AI, you're about to become obsolete right now, if you're not already. So, me going into AI is just a natural evolution. And it's funny, people my age, they come up to me and they say, "Hey, bud, you know anything about this AI stuff? What do you think? It's going to last or what?" so, so I just like roll my eyes and go, "Huh? Okay." But that's, I know about retired people and stuff like that. And they don't need to know. They don't want to know any of this stuff. I'm just the opposite. I just want to know all the because I've always been into science fiction and technology, and so I'm not going anywhere. Anyway, oh, can I get back to something I was thinking of about
Yeah.
when we started in the beginning about creating courses and stuff, or at least having the experience of teaching and writing? Because the first courses I ever created there were no videos. Okay, it was all text, and you had to write out everything. So it was like making a simple website, and I had to create the entire every chapter built on the next chapter and got harder and harder, all that kind of stuff. And then there was a project, but you weren't there to explain it. So you had to write everything out, which was really an interesting experience and very time consuming. And my first course that I taught online was called, I believe it was called Intro to HTML. And there was no CMS. It was all whatever I could make by hand. And students would upload their files. They would upload their files in a system that I reviewed the files manually. I would look at the code and say it's good or not good or whatever. And I got paid. That course was marketed through adult education systems around mostly New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, because they didn't have anything else, and they wanted to offer this stuff to their adult education program. So that lasted a little while. It wasn't going to last forever, but the time it took to create that, today it's just a lot faster to create stuff because we have Lifter LMS and stuff like that, right? So we have a lot of choices now. But before, my word of advice to anybody who's thinking of it, creating a course, is to plan all the stuff out in advance. Don't start the course first. Come up with your title, come up with your chapter headings, subheads, everything. Just do a huge outline and then start filling in. And know we're going to start here and end up over here. What is the goal? What do you want people to be doing during the course, after the course? What's the takeaway? What are your expectations of a teacher for what the student should know? Not just what their expectations are. What do you expect them to know? And then you can build a course around that. So whatever.
I think of that like writing, like let's say writing a book or a blog
Right.
post or
Yeah.
something. I like to use the framework writing is 3 parts and ideally equal parts of research, writing, and editing.
Mm-hmm.
So course creation is the same, like slow down. Don't just tell the AI to make me a course about
Yeah.
X.
Right.
Do a ton of research. I mean, you've been doing it your life if it's your subject matter expertise, but
Right.
dig it deep, see what else is out there,
Right.
and then creating it, polishing it, and then editing is also come back and improve it. I'm sure you improved your HTML course over time, right?
Yes and no. And the
Okay.
reason why I say yes and no is because it didn't change all that much. Like a tag is a tag, and attributes and values, they're pretty much, after a while, they got pretty well settled out. I mean, with this HTML, then we had XHTML, then we had back HTML. It wasn't terribly changing. But here's what's different now than back in the day is that we have different ways now to communicate that we really didn't have in 2001, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever. You've got video, you've got better ways to do screenshots and animation and AI animation. And God, I mean, you could do avatars, you could do all kinds of engaging things now that I couldn't do. I would have like thought about it, but I didn't know Camtasia then. I didn't know. So there's so many different tools that we have to communicate, to make. And and it's now, here's the other thing too. If you're creating a course, what I just said might be just totally bewildering, right? Like, what, I have to learn all this stuff? Number one, no, you don't. Learn only what you need to know. But trying to learn something that's going to have broad application. So you don't want to spend a lot of time learning something that you're just going to use a small bit of time that will only do a very small little thing for you. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. So I always look at something like, hey, once I master this thing, like I know Camtasia pretty well, what else can I use it for if I need to do blah, 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 whatever, I could use Camtasia for that. So you're building, so don't try to think of like, I need to learn everything, because you don't, but choose wisely and stick with industry tools like Camtasia, Snagit, stuff that people are using. Don't try to do like one of these little knockoff things that aren't really as popular. They're popular for a reason, because they're really good. So, yeah, like, you don't have to learn Final Cut Pro and Premiere and Camtasia. Camtasia really is as far as screen capture video goes, it's probably, what do you think, the gold standard here?
Probably, yeah. Camtasia. I mean, Descript is coming up with its AI tools,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
a
yeah.
I'm a ScreenFlow guy with a Mac,
Oh
so
yeah, there you go, ScreenFlow. Yeah, I don't know it, but it's certainly well known. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, if you're new, you want to, explore these tools and then settle on one and get a license or whatever. I'm doing that right now with this animated AI stuff, which is like, I look at a whole bunch and I go, that's the one I want to use. So, and it's not like, are other people using it? Well, yeah, but it doesn't, I don't know. It's just like, don't worry, you don't have to master everything. It's not important. What you do have to master is a really good outline of your course. I think that is so important, and that either you, here's another thing. And Chris, how does your system work? Do you have anything built in for feedback? That is it easy for students to tell the course creator, hey, this was good, or I didn't understand this, or, you know what I mean? Like a whole feedback loop, is that built in by any chance?
we do. We have a lot of ways we do that with like a private coaching thing where there can be a private conversation. We have
Okay, right.
comments and forums,
Okay,
and we also do a lot of education, showing people how to use form plugins and things to create
right.
feedback loops. We have assignments and quizzes that have remarks and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
feedback is, I think, such an important part of learning, and that's something that humans can do. AI can give feedback. You can have an AI tutor or whatever, but I think that's the sign of a true master teacher, is like realizing that not all students are exactly the same. They have their
Oh,
unique challenges. You got to adapt, right?
yeah. And the other thing is, it's great to get feedback that says, "Hey, bud, this course is really great." All right,
That's a
everybody wants.
testimonial. That's a testimonial.
That's right. But it's the ones that dropped out after the first lesson or second lesson. What happened? Maybe it may have nothing to do with you. My father died. This, that, whatever. But if it is something that, hey, I got stuck, I didn't understand. Okay, was it just, did we market it incorrectly? A lot of times, people say, oh, I didn't know you were going to do that. That's very important in the marketing, is that it's clear what it is that the person is going to learn. Because I've seen where, like, either I took a course or somebody took a course from me and said, like, this is not what I was expecting. So, yeah, the marketing is really not just in terms of getting the information out, but in being very accurate as to what it is, that you're selling, and you are selling. you know. So, how do you think? I could ask you a million questions. If I'm a course creator, I was a course creator, but um, what's a good way? Do you do anything? Does your system have anything built in that concerns like social media and marketing, or is that just something that's totally out of the bounds of what you offer?
Um, I mean, we have like viral loops built in where somebody
Mm,
could share like a certificate to social
okay.
media.
Mhm. Okay.
We do a lot of education around marketing. So, like in my view, one of the best content marketing things you can do as a course creator is help people for free with a free mini course
Ab
around some topic that really sets them up to be a perfect fit for your paid program or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, uh,
And can you do like a concept can a course creator do like a try before you buy kind of thing, like, or not?
yeah, we have a integrated e-commerce system. We also integrate with Woo, but we have our own Stripe and PayPal. But you can
Mhm.
do like free trials and set up all kinds of access rules for how long and when and what the payment's going to be and stuff like that.
Right. And do you, um now I wasn't expecting to I don't care. I just this is the way it goes with me. But do you, is this available in the WordPress repository? And obviously there's a pro version or it's just, pay version?
Yeah, we've always been big fan. Our company mission is to lift up others through education and to democratize learning in the digital classroom.
Oh, I
So
love all of this. Good for you.
our
Yeah.
free core plugin is extremely powerful and, you know, 80% of our people are just using the free LMS, which helps people get started and get moving
Sure.
and it's very powerful. I mean, every time we do a release of updates, we're always adding stuff to the core and then focusing on some of our paid add-ons and things.
Mhm. Now, do you guys have a course? I think you do, maybe I misunderstood, about how to market your course.
Yes, we have lots of courses. So we have a quick start course, which is how to like it
Mhm.
covers like what you're saying, don't teach them everything. Like we show the 5% of like, okay, this is how you set up the site, this is how the system
Mhm.
works and all that.
Mhm.
We did a web like a we brought in some guest experts and did some content ourselves to help
Mhm.
people show people how to go from 0 to 10 enrollments because when we looked at the data, we realized that if people had at least 10 enrollments, their platform was going to stick and they were going to stay around.
Mhm.
So that includes a lot of like marketing help and showing people like what works to get students and stuff like that.
Yeah, because your success is based on their success in the sense that you want them to renew their licenses.
Exactly.
So obviously, so and that's kind of like the way that this works. So you want them to be successful.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the most important questions a course creator can ask is who? Who is this for? Like, because we have our subject matter expertise
Right.
and this goes by many names like the ideal learner, customer avatar, things like that.
Mhm.
But that who question, if anybody is either struggling or has a modest win or a runaway success, I think that who question is fundamental.
Absolutely.
So learning about that. And I wanted to tie that who question into something you said earlier.
Well, before you do it, let me just stick
Yeah.
something in and hold on to that for 1 sec.
Okay.
That is the who question is the fundamental question. And if you teach it in class, you'll find out who the who is because you'll be
Yeah,
telling
like
people.
you when you were telling me, my course
Right.
creator brain's going like, okay, he got graphic designers in, they didn't understand the web, they're inserting the Flash
Right.
videos. Like I just naturally do it. I like form the avatar that Bo was dealing with, but that's
Right.
easy to do in a classroom. It's
Right.
much harder on the World Wide Web, right?
Absolutely. And because I mean, I knew it was graphic artists, and then eventually it turned into some more writers, and then it turned into people who were working in offices. They needed to manage their websites for their boss, and then after a while, I knew exactly who the who was that I was
Yeah.
creating the course. And when you're sitting writing it, you'll say, "Well, does Susie so and so under she can understand what you're talking about here?" So you know your audience, yeah. Okay, what I sidetracked you, so I'm sorry.
No, you're good. This is the magic of two podcasters talking to each other. The
The danger.
um you mentioned I think there's some hope here in terms of what's AI going to do. And what I mean is we've been through technological revolutions before,
Hmm.
and history doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes. And if you think about the Industrial Revolution, right? A lot of people left the farm and went to big cities with the emerging, industrial jobs, and also the beginning of the white collar kind of knowledge economy worker.
Hmm.
And when somebody comes off the farm and they show up by you over in New York City, what do they say? They say, "Oh, wow, the world's moving really fast. It's really busy. I don't know how these subways and all this public
Yeah,
transport," and it's like overwhelming. I
right.
think that's where we are with AI. And it's really busy. Things are changing really fast. But a new economy emerged through industrialization and the rising middle class and the white collar and all that. But here's the scary part, but also the opportunity, which is uh, junior level job positions are the first things kind of replaced by AI. So we would often use, let's say, a junior web developer at a software company
Mhm.
to kind of get on board, learn the ropes and stuff. But a lot of that stuff's going to AI.
Yeah.
So what has to happen if we go back to the who question, like what's a high school graduate to do these days? They need a way to figure out how to leapfrog and sort of like you mentioned you like science fiction. When Neo plugs into the Matrix and gets the download about combat,
Hmm.
like you, and also what you said earlier, I'm just tying this all together about, oh, I actually do know how to do multi-site from the command line. I just had to get in here and tinker. And this is, um, a particular learning style called kinesthetic, where we right now with AI, the people that have a kinesthetic learning style and just kind of learn by doing, they have an unfair advantage to
Is
like,
that so? Good to hear.
well, it's just an observation because that's what
Right.
people are doing. They're just kind of figuring it out. But the point being, and this is the challenge, there's a giant class of education, like young adults and whatnot, that are scared the entry level jobs are being automated. But then I tie it back to history and look at, well, what did the young people do when they came off the farm? In many ways, they adapted a little maybe easier and quicker to the city than the older person who lost the job and then had to go figure out how to hang in the big time. But there's got to be something with in education by helping kids just adapt to the new world, and because there can also be, just like with industrial machines, there can be much greater output, but that's scary, and you got to learn how to leverage all these machines and technologies and stuff like
But
that.
as you're talking, I'm thinking, all of these changes that came about from farm industrial, from agriculture to industrial to information, the pace just gets fast, as we know. And these disruptive um, events, technologies, whatever, be, become faster, closer and closer together, more disruptive. Um, you know, I mean, I thought we just disrupted everything with e-commerce. Now what?
Right.
I'm shaking my head. I can't, and now I have kids that are, I mean, it's no wonder we are as a society, as a world where we are today with a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Because it's just, this is, a long time ago, there was a book called The Third Wave, written by a guy named Alvin Toffler. This is like 50 years ago or so. And it's really funny. My wife isn't really into this kind of stuff, but when I met her, we were both reading that book. And that's not the kind of book she reads, it's the kind of book I read. And it was all about where we are today, the inability of human beings to process and understand rapid change. This is what he was talking about 50 years ago. So, wow, you know, I mean, and 50 years ago or 40 years ago, we didn't even have fax machines. These things
Right.
come and go in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
when fax machines came out, oh, this is great. This could be here forever. It was here for like 10 minutes. I mean, when you live as long as I have, you see things come and go so fast now
Yeah.
that, you think like, okay, well, digital has to be the end here, right? Well, yes, but I don't know, when I used to have records and albums and CDs and tapes and all that kind of stuff, I don't have, and I'm moving, I don't need any of that stuff anymore. I mean, I used to collect, and who knew we were going to have digital? You don't need it. You don't need any of this junk anymore. So
Well,
whatever.
I think
It's
that's the
very hard.
fundamental.
What I'm saying is, it's very hard for people in general, and including me, to adapt to such rapid change and understand your place in the world and how you can be effective. It's very hard.
Yeah. I heard something funny on a podcast the other day. You don't know much of my background stuff, but I used to run sled dogs in Alaska, and I managed a tour business that you could only get to by helicopter on a glacier. And
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast where somebody was having a discussion similar to what we're having
Hmm.
about AI, and they were
Hmm.
talking about what's the future opportunity. And they're basically saying like, well, human experiences where people go outdoors and, be in nature and like remember what it's like to be human. I'm like, that's where I came from. We're going back there. And it's just interesting though. So like, um, but there's gotta be, I mean, the human will still need things, but the needs are gonna change. We just got to figure out what that is. And sometimes it's analog, like getting back to the great outdoors. Other things might be like psychologists to help people deal with, exponential technology and like overwhelm and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, but you're right. It's interesting because I think you're correct. The crux of the issue is the rate of change, not just the change,
Right.
right?
I
And
That's
what
the way
is
I look at things, is the rate of change. Right.
and the human processor up here, you can't upgrade it. Like it doesn't change like technology changes. So
Let's just say it this way: the shit stays in the queue. Okay. I mean, can you swear on this show? I just did. Okay. But yeah, but that's it. It's like a printer. It's just in the queue, and it gets backed up, and stuff you just go on overload, and that's where things are. And it's I don't think we as a species can comprehend any of this stuff right now. Really, I think we're all. I mean, I'm having trouble just thinking about it. So maybe it's just me, but I think we're all struggling with this. Not just I know, because I talk to a lot of people, and I see that everybody's sort of struggling with this. So, hey, can we talk about my podcast? Is that okay?
yeah, let's do
All
it.
right. I mean,
Tell us
I
about,
know.
tell us
What?
about Seriously Bud.
Okay, all right. And you're going to be on it, so because you got some good stuff already with the dogs and Alaska and all that. So Seriously Bud is a podcast I've launched February 29th, 24, I'm sorry, 2024. And every Friday I drop an episode featuring an unexpected conversation with somebody in the WordPress community. So we don't talk shop, we don't talk WordPress, we don't generally talk about anything. It's really a show about nothing. So we just talk about the guest's life, their story. Where were they born? What did they do? Where did they lived? What was it like to do so and so, whatever? And it came from when I left WordCamp US 2023. Were you there? You were
Uh,
probably there, right?
which one was that? Were
In
we in?
Washington D.C.,
Oh, yeah, I was there. I was there.
the freezer bowl. I mean, it was really freezing in there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the vendors were like 30 miles away from the. Yeah, we know. Anyway, when I left that, I was in an Uber, and I was thinking like, boy, wouldn't it be great if I could just speak with Chris Badgett a little longer, because I just waved to him, and I just saw for a second, I thought that guy's kind of interesting. But there's just no time, because you're like a pinball. You're just like bouncing from one person to the next, and you're having a great time, but it's just like, and so I thought like, well, yeah, why don't you do a podcast and just talk to them about their life story, and not like something that they're marketing and developing. Now that stuff gets in there a little bit, but I just try to keep it out because there's lots of podcasts that talk about product and marketing and community and stuff. I just wanted to focus on the person that I was talking to, like a real conversation about their life. Really, that's what I was looking for. So turns out, I was thinking about it and I said, oh, um, I don't think there's anybody that's doing anything like this, and turned out there wasn't anybody that doing exactly this. It's maybe something similar, but not exactly. And let's just say this. I never thought I would be a podcaster. The podcast came looking for me. So it wasn't like I was sitting around like, gee, I should have a podcast. No, it didn't go that way. And I'm sitting in the car thinking like, I don't even care if I ever get any sponsors. I don't care if anybody listens to it. I just want to do this. And, then after a while I said, yes, I do care if people listen. Yes, I do care if I get sponsors, because it takes a lot of time to do this. And even though I love doing it, I want to get paid to do it too. And so there I am. So tomorrow will be episode 58. And I use Descript, which is something I had to learn. I didn't know Descript, but a lot of other things I basically already knew because I'd been on podcasts before. And the fact, though, that I'm doing a podcast, well, go ask Bob Dunn, because for years I would say to him, why would you do this? I would go up to him all the time and go, Bob, why are you doing a podcast? This is crazy. This is like, I don't understand why people do this. And then, now, I understand why. And once you start doing it, and if you love doing it, it's just really hard. It becomes your life, and look at how many shows have you done?
Just crossed 500.
And Rob Cairns, I did his 400th show. But it turns out there's a lot of podcasters in the WordPress space. Do you have any idea why?
Well, my theory is that WordPress people are above average in terms of creativity, content creation. We also work remotely, so like we get a lot out of online media, but also just connecting with humans. And we also look beyond a company, which is what I love about the angle of your podcast. Like, who are the humans here? Like, what's the backstory here? I think that's a wonderful angle.
Yeah. That's what I like. I mean, I'm sort of addicted to stories, like.
Yeah, we all are. That's what makes us human. I have a background in anthropology, and storytelling is as human as it gets, right?
Yeah. And I had no idea about this stuff. Like, if you told me, like, what happened in 2018, I'll tell you a real quick story. I took a train trip on Amtrak around the United States. I circumnavigated the United States on Amtrak, and I stopped in different cities, and I never felt alone because I was constantly interviewing people wherever I went. Now, they were conversations, but I would sit with somebody on a train all night long and talk about their childhood. And the stories I heard were on one person to the next were just mind-boggling. And I started realizing, like, oh my God, these are just regular people. There's nothing like, and they all have these incredible stories. So I didn't leave that experience saying like, okay, I'll do a podcast. No, it just stayed in my head. And then eventually it met up with this 2023 thing. And I said, oh, do a podcast. You're ready to do this, So, I mean, you're like sort of like made to do this. And it turned out, I was sort of like made to do this. It's really funny that at a later stage in life, you can find something that is your calling, that you just did not know.
Yeah, sometimes it finds you, right?
Yeah, this absolutely found me because like I said, I wasn't exactly sitting around wondering, should I do a podcast? Because if I had done that, I said, no way. So it's a big surprise, that it is. And you'll be on the show for sure. I can't tell you what year, but you'll be on the show.
All right.
All right.
Well, that's Seriously Bud. You can find him at seriouslybud.com. It's Bud Kraus, and also Joy of WP. Any final words?
Yeah.
Any
Joy
final
W,
words for the folks
yeah,
or
Joy
any other
WP
way to
is like,
connect with you?
yeah, Joy WP is the business side of me, although the podcast is it's business too. Yeah, but Joy of WP is the easiest way to reach me, and I hope you will, because it's always like really cool to meet people this way. And the really cool thing about what we do is we actually do meet people online. We're all sort of experts at. I can name tons of people that are friends of mine today that I met online first before I ever saw them in person, which is really extraordinary when you think about it. I think it is. Whatever.
And that's just to close it out. And that's one of those unforeseen things where this disruptive technology actually increased human connectivity in a way, which is amazing.
Yeah, good point, because I tend to think of social media as not social media. It's not really social. But when you use it to make strong connections and friendships and business connections and whatever, and then you meet them and stuff, that is that's the ultimate, or reconnecting with people. That's like all this stuff has such big trade-offs, good and bad. So that's it.
Thanks for coming on the show, bud. We really appreciate it.
Chris, thank you so much for even asking me. It was a